Good morning and welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to the Women's Empower Network. We're so excited you're here, and I'm very excited to get to meet Mimi and learn who she is, a little bit about her story and journey so we can be inspired. So, welcome, Mimi.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, if you would you tell us a little bit about your story and journey that led you to what you're passionate about today?
Well, it's a long journey. I graduated from high school and then I got married when I was 17 and
Oh, wow.
I lived in Japan for 2 years. So I had started college. I think I did one semester of college and I just wanted to have an adventure. I wanted to marry my high school sweetheart. So then I realized that I needed to go to school, right? Like I just woke up and smelled the coffee. So when I got back to San Diego, I had to wait a year to get residency. And then I started college at night while working full time during the day. Full time at night, full time during the day for 10 years. So
Oh my
I did.
gosh.
I know. I was like I went to junior college for 7 years and I got 3 degrees and I guess I was just afraid to go to the university because my ex-husband he would say, and this is why he's my ex, well, you're getting straight A's now, but you're not at real school. So I met with I think they told me I had to come meet with a counselor and she's like, you gotta go. And then I wanted to go to UCSD, but I didn't know they didn't have a night program. So my only option was SDSU. And I went there and I was talked into getting an accounting degree because my best friend at the time was a accounting PhD professor. I said, well, I want to do an easy, because all this time I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, right? Like even in high school, I found that I wrote about it in my journal that I wanted to be a lawyer. My mom always said, you should be a lawyer because you're so good at arguing. Because
I
I'd
love
fight
that.
with her and I'd like win because I would out logic her, right? So I was like, so I always knew I wanted to go to law school, so I just was compelled to get the best grades I could, and I got straight A's. So I went to school full time at night, I got straight A's, and I worked full time during the day. Um, because my ex-husband, again, he said when we got married, he said, well, you can go to school, but I'm not paying for it. You have to work. And he was so silly because if I had just gone to school full time, I could have graduated a lot earlier and gotten like my first job as a lawyer. I made $125,000 a year out of law school. So he was very, he wasn't, and that's why I left him then he was like, well, you're getting good grades because you're going to SDSU. But, I went to University of Champaign-Urbana, like a hard school. So then when I got into Harvard Law School, I was like, oh, yokes, I got into Harvard Law School. And I said, now what? Now what are you going to say to me?
That's kind of, now we're still talking about the same person that was the high school sweetheart that you went to Japan
No,
with.
no, 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 no. We dumped him.
Oh,
Oh, he was not. We both grew up in abusive families, and I thought that was normal, like to hit each other and like to have my dad beat on my mom, he beat on the kids. So I thought that was normal, and then I realized he was going to kill me. He would he would choke me. Like it happened a few times, and I just remember the last time it happened. I was like, you know what? I got to get out of here because. So yeah, then I met my second husband the night that I went to see a lawyer to divorce my first husband, and I was engaged. This is very healthy behavior on my part. And so then we were engaged before I was even divorced, and I hopped right into that. And I kind of blame him because I was very afraid to be alone. And I thought and I was just very destroyed from this other relationship. And he never hit me, but he was, I think, emotionally abusive, which I didn't see that for a long time, you know. And so we got married and I thought I was happy, but then this stuff kept come like he just not being supportive. And when
right.
and when I left him, he met a girl in Japan. He was in the Navy Reserves. That like I left him in January. He met this girl in the summer, and they got married. And she didn't even speak English, and I think they're still married.
Wow. So he wanted somebody subservient. That's my
I think
impression.
so. I think so. Well, but then we had talked about whoever made more money, we wanted to have kids eventually, and whoever made more money was going to work and the other person was going to stay at home. And all of a sudden, like I realized, hey, I'm going to be the one working and he's going to be staying at home. And he would joke around about he'd put the baby in like the buggy to go. He liked to golf, and and I was like, well, don't you think that's kind of dangerous to have a baby out on like golf course? He goes, well, I'll put like a blanket over it or something so if the ball goes over there. But I was like, how many babies have you taken care of? Because I don't think it's gonna work out the way you think it's gonna work out.
Right? Yeah. So you graduated and you became a lawyer. I've
I mean, I unfortunately I picked the most stressful kind of law, which is securities law. Um, which I did not I was not diagnosed with bipolar disorder yet. And I know that my doctor said, maybe that wasn't the best career for you. And it turned out to not be. I worked for, I think, 10 or 11 years. And I was only working part time toward the end. And I just couldn't, I would get really depressed and then I couldn't work. And so finally, my doctor said, why don't you apply for disability? And I got it. Like she said, she goes, it's hard to get. So obviously that's how sick I was. So I got it no problem the first time. And then, and I thought about it, like I was very devastated. Like losing my career was so, like that was my identity.
right.
So it's even now I struggle with it a little bit. Like I'm embarrassed because like I'm not working, but I would kind of do pro bono stuff and I'd volunteer at the domestic violence restraining clinic. So I kind of kept busy. I did some stuff. I did a lot of pro bono work for like friends and stuff. And then, I made a little bit of money doing that, but I just wasn't, it was very hard because my health was so inconsistent. So I couldn't really get a job again. Um, and I guess I finally realized I, I'm I feel good at times and then I don't because the first thing that was awful before I stopped practicing was my brother uh, lost his battle to depression and completed suicide in my home when I was sort of taking care of him. And that was
Oh,
in
wow.
2005. And that messed me up. I mean, obviously
Yeah.
for years. But then like right after I had just gotten married to my third husband. And I had been single for a long time, so I think but I really wanted to have a baby. So we got married in June, and then we went on our honeymoon, and then my brother moved in on August because he called me at midnight on a Sunday night, and I was working. I had a project due, I remember, at midnight, and I wasn't going to answer the phone till I finished the project for the partner. And he had a gun in his mouth, and if I didn't answer the phone, he was going to pull the trigger. So he told me this, and then I kept him on the phone all night, and I booked him a ticket on Southwest, and I talked to him until he got on the plane and had to turn his phone off, and then I picked him up in the airport and I took him to the mental hospital. So I did everything you're supposed to do. And then he did an outpatient program, um, and I think he was just stressed. He was going back to Chicago the next day to get his stuff and move back to San Diego. And I had rented the house next door for him. And he completed um, the day before he was supposed to go. So that was very tough. And then this like the same month I got pregnant because I was off my meds because I was trying to get pregnant, and I got pregnant, and that was real tough. The pregnancy was very hard without medication. So then I had my beautiful daughter, Kimiko, in July, and we had 4 wonderful years. And then she was diagnosed with stage 4 neuroblastoma cancer.
Wow.
And yeah. So that was like, I was just kind of being, you know, getting back on my feet. I did go back to work. I did go back to work when she could talk. Um, and then she fought for 8.5 years and then she died in January of 2019. And, ever since then, I just have really been struggling. But then I was like, well, like the end of the year, I was like, I want to be an entrepreneur. So I started a consulting business um, and coaching, and then I started a nonprofit. And I kind of decided I didn't like the consulting. Um, so I'm focusing on the nonprofit, and I really like AI. So I want to figure out a way to become an AI consultant. And so
Oh, interesting.
yeah, I take a lot of classes on it, and then I'm going to go see the Department of Rehabilitation, and they'll pay for me to get, a degree or whatever. So I'll go back to school and do that. So it's
I
hard
can
to
kind
advance.
of see how they relate though, because it's kind of like you were mentioning when you were a kid and you would argue with your mother that you would be logical and strategic. And AI is logical and strategic.
Yeah, I just really like it. I've always liked computer stuff. And I've always I was a like in high school I started working on a computer when they were first coming out, right? And I did
Right.
typesetting on the computer. And so I really was good at computer stuff. And then when I became a lawyer, I had people to take care of all that. So I kind of was not good. So this last year, I really worked. I took a lot of classes. I had to learn how to do Excel, and I learned how to do web pages, and I do all the social media. So I like social media, doing, so like maybe doing something like a digital marketing agency. So I think that's where I want to, and I like it because you can do it totally remote.
Right.
Um, and I feel like it's beneficial. I feel like it's like lawyers are so. I don't feel like lawyers are beneficial, but I feel like working with AI and that kind of stuff, you can really help businesses to be more effective.
So what does it mean to you to be an AI consultant for someone? How do you see that?
I see it. I don't like want big like to work for the same client all like for be employed sort of by the client. I kind of want to just do projects, so then that way if I need to take a break for my mental health I can. So I guess it would be finding clients. Oh, they want, they ideally, and what I've been training is to go into businesses and help them use AI in their business, because they're saying now if you don't put AI in your business, you're not going to be able to compete. It was about bipolar disorder and kind of a memoir, and then a self-help. And I would love to do more in that space where my dream, I have the what do you call it, the Campino for Bipolars Anonymous, and I want to create a 12-step program with an app. I want to learn how to code apps. And that's kind of where, maybe I really think passive income is the way to go. Like trying.
Yes.
So with my books, I want to do self-publishing and have books that generate passive income. And then I can also help other people who write a book. And, maybe it's not going to sell 1 million copies, but, they did it. It's hard to write a book.
No, but at the same time, a book lives on long after we do, and especially in the topic that you're talking about, um, that book could make a difference for somebody.
Well, that, and like I said, and I can help other people. Like it does. There is a learning curve, to doing the self-publishing and then promoting it. But that's something I could do, also do for people. And then I don't want to have meetings because I think there's other like DBSA, the Depression Bipolar Support Alliance, they kind of have that space, and then NAMI has meetings. So mine would be I want to have a like I love apps and I love the gamification, and I really think you can teach people how to develop the lifestyle habits that they need to really be healthy with this illness.
And do you feel that's what you've achieved with your illness?
Yes, that's I've been struggling with, I mean, I've actually been struggling my whole life. It got worse as I got older. And then I think with my traumas, that certainly is not helpful for your
Right.
mental
Well, no, it's that
mental health.
stress that could trigger it.
Well, yeah, and I feel like I used to be very resilient and I'm just not anymore. So Um, I do a lot of, I meditate every day and I do yoga and I exercise and, there's a lot of things like I try to eat right. There's just a lot of things you can do. I keep a really strict schedule because you're supposed to get up at the same time every day. So I'm really strict with myself about my lifestyle. Whereas before, I don't know, I just didn't take it as seriously. And I think a lot of people don't. And they just don't understand like how much better their illness would be.
It's, I mean, so is it how in the medical field, is it some chemical imbalance? I mean, how is it
Yeah, your
identified?
brain, your brain doesn't, they don't have any kind of blood test or anything for it. They just have like factors. And that's what makes it very hard to treat because it presents itself very differently in different people. And, I've tried probably 20 antidepressants and only one has worked, right, in my life. And then they didn't want me to take it because it would trigger a manic episode. So it's just, it's a really tough, and it's like people that like, I feel like people that have it and are able to really function, I just feel like maybe they don't really have it because that's not like bipolar is chaos and you know, it's just a very unpleasant illness.
Is it when you're in an episode, is it like a loss of rationality and like surge of,
It
I
can't,
mean,
well,
can you
the
describe it?
reason it's called bipolar because you go from severe depression, which often for me is suicidal depression, and I've gotten hospitalized for that so that I didn't do it. And then you have a little like I'm a rapid cycler, so some people they get depressed and then they're fine for a couple of years or longer. And some people just have the depression, but I definitely go, I mean, people have tried to say, because some people don't believe, that it's real. And they're like, "Oh, are you sure you have it?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sure I have it." So I normally like every quarter, I'll go from being super depressed and then I start to feel better and I tend to not be able to sleep. So now I take a really heavy Haldol, which is a very strong antipsychotic, and then I can sleep and then I don't get worse. But if you don't get sleep, like it gets worse, right? Because I used to go 3 or 4 days without sleeping. And then you can, like anybody that goes without sleep for 3 or 4 days, you get a little crazy. But yeah, and I would just I was aware of what was going on, but I believe like after my brother died and I was pregnant, I thought my brother was alive, right? And I thought I said he was my doctor, and I really believed that, you know. So you get, I mean, it's called being psychotic. You're just not in touch with reality, and that's really I used to get really afraid that when I was psychotic, I would kill myself, but I never wanted to. I never felt that way. So, like, I don't worry about that as much. But yeah, and really, I've had electric shock therapy when I was really depressed. So I have a pretty serious case.
Well, it
And
sounds like you have a really just because of your level of intelligence and desire to learn about things, a real in-depth understanding about this
that my
disease
my
or this
my
illness.
doctor, my therapist said that I'm very self-aware of the illness. Um, So I have to be. I have to be. So yeah, it's like I said, I wouldn't. I always say, well, it's not as bad as cancer, right? When my daughter had cancer, what she went through with the chemo and all that stuff, but it is bad because you don't want to live, and then you don't feel very good living your life that way. You're just not feeling any joy, and even I struggle with it because I really want to be with my dog. I believe in an afterlife, and I don't. I sort of stay here because I have to and because I know my daughter would want me to. But if I died, I wouldn't feel bad. Like I'm ready to
Right.
go in. And because I believe in an afterlife too, I think we suffer here in this plane of existence. And I just pray that the next part is better. We have no way of knowing, right? Because I just read this thing recently about quantum like physics and stuff, and they said, when you die, you pop into another reality, another parallel universe, and so who knows what's going to be happening there.
I know, right? Well, this has been very insightful, and I really appreciate you sharing your story and journey. And I know that there's probably women in this group, because of the number of people in the group that
Yeah,
can identify with what you're saying. So, is there a way where people can connect with you if they want to?
I have a nonprofit. It's the number 4KIMI.org. So if you get on that website and I try to do, I do too much on there. So I'm trying to focus it on mental health, but you can contact me on there. I'm pretty sure my email's on there too. And then my emails is, what is it's Michiko Kimmy at gmail.com is my personal email. And Kimmy's my daughter's name. So it's my first name, my Japanese name, and my daughter's name, her nickname at
Oh,
gmail.com. And I would love to hear from people because I'll tell you what, you don't, when I go to support group meetings, it's not people that are doing well, right? So I did used to have a group that met once a month for professional, like people that were working and bipolar. And I actually met some good people that I'm still friends with. Kimmy was little, so this is a long time ago, probably like 15 years ago, but none of the other support groups I went to um had that focus. And I found when we would talk about, like, what do you do when you're really depressed? What do you say when you call in? Do you ever tell them that you have this disabilities and ask for accommodation? And the answer is you don't tell them unless you absolutely have to. I did end up having, before I went on disability, I did tell the partner at my firm, and he was really good about it. And I had a very flexible schedule. So um, you just have to be careful because I've heard of a lot of other people just being treated differently, and you know maybe they didn't get fired because they didn't want the liability because of the disclosed disability, but they made it not pleasant to work there.
right. Yeah, unfortunately, that just happens in all walk of life.
Mm.
Um, because yeah, we're all just made up of people. So yeah,
Well,
well,
and
this
that's
has
why I
been
like having my own business, right? Because then
right,
I don't have to answer to anyone but me.
right, and you can set your schedule accordingly.
Right.
So I'll just to let the audience know, we'll be sure to put your contact information
Okay.
above this interview and also in the comments. And is there any parting words of wisdom before we go today?
I guess I would say you do, you will be happier in life if you're following your passion. I spent a lot of years working in a job I hated because it paid so well. And I've never been more unhappy. I've never been like richer, but been more unhappy. And now I'm kind of poor, but I'm pretty happy with, I feel very grateful that because of disability insurance, I had the luxury of not having to work. And that was really
Right,
when I lost my daughter. It took a long time to grieve. Like I was really like in bed for a long time. So if I wouldn't have been able to do that with a job, and then how would I have made money? So Um, it's not a lot of money, but it's enough to survive on. So I just, don't do something you hate. I know we're all smart, we're all creative, and figure out a way to do what you love
That's
and get
incredible.
paid for it.
Well, Mimi, thank you so much for sharing yourself with us today. I know it's very, you know, it's very challenging and very profound, but I know that there's people out there that can really resonate with you and your experience, and it'd be great for all of you to connect with each other and support each other because that's what it's all about, I think, too, is just finding that tribe that really helps you grow and support and be the best version of yourself, whatever that is.
Yeah.